Um,
I just
hi,
wanted to
Hi,
myself
Thea.
welcome to the call.
Hi,
Uh,
Thea.
Working on the Zephyr project
Oh, okay,
foundation. So
cool. Are
love
are you
doing.
at the LF?
I'm a contractor, so just started, so
Okay.
very new.
Okay, well, nice to have you here. Just FYI, I do record these sessions just so we can post them up later. So if you say anything mean, I can delete it later. But
Notorious.
that ability. Cool. Well, it's nice to have you here. Are you part of the project, like from community management perspective, or from a code
Yeah,
contribution
so
perspective?
I'm their developer advocate, and previously was a developer advocate for geospatial projects within the Eclipse Foundation.
Okay. Yep.
And before that with OpenStreetMap and Random Acts of Kindness. So
Yeah,
always
sure.
the advocate side.
Yeah, actually, I just came across OpenStreetMap. Maybe I had just not seen it. I had just come across it about a month ago. Very cool project. Very, very cool. Well, Zephyr's cool too. Right on. All right, so Thea, just so you know, the way that we run these is every Tuesday out. So the first Tuesday of every month we have a formal official meeting, and then the other Tuesdays are just kind of, they're nothing. We have no agenda. I'm here. Georg is here. Ray's here a lot. Anyway, people just kind of come and go. So there's nothing really official. Oh, Kate's here too. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Kate.
So that's kind of how we run these sessions. So if you have things you want to bring up, kind of put on our radar, that's totally cool. You can do that. Things you want us to take a look at, no problem. But that's what these meetings are.
Fantastic.
Yep. So I was telling Ray, we got the new, thanks to Kate, we have the new CHAOSS email set up. So we're going to have CHAOSS at list.linuxfoundation.com.
Yes. Finally.
Good to go. Yes. So that's good. I don't know. I guess I'll just kind of put it out to the list that people should join up. Is that what you think? I mean, I'm not going to manually move everybody.
No, I think we should send an email to the old list and say, hey, please register for the new list. And we have to change it everywhere on our wikis and website and repositories. And then we monitor the old list only to remind people to also post to the new list and not.
Okay. Okay. That's yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been done before. I know SPDX, there was a new list that they set up at some point and just moved people over. So it can be done.
Yep. It's very painful.
Okay, well.
Well, Kate, since you're here, do you know if we can transfer the archive?
Ask Ray.
Ray.
Yeah, that should be doable. I mean, that might be another help desk request. You can just migrate the archives over. And then, I mean, the process of doing that, you should be able to move the subscribers over as well, if that makes it easier. But I don't know if that needs to be opted in or if anyone's going to be upset because like people just were migrated over. But
I'm just wondering why there was a decision not to just rename it.
Oh, well, isn't that what we sort of did? Could we just...
We created a new one.
Yeah, well, how would I rename it without creating a new one? We wanted CHAOSS. We wanted CHAOSS at list.foundation.com.
Oh, okay.
That's what we wanted, just for simplicity's sake.
Okay.
So if there was an easier way, then I made it more complicated. Sorry.
Well, we'll get through it.
Okay. Pain. We'll figure out the pain. Okay, cool. So that's done. Thank you, Kate, for helping on that one. I do appreciate it. Let's see. How about the community summit? The open, what's it called?
Community Leadership Summit.
Yeah. How was that for everybody? How'd that go?
I thought it went really well. Ray gave a great talk. I thought there were a number of really excellent talks, and a lot of the unconference was really well done. I did an unconference on Saturday, and then we had another unconference that Danielle and I did on Sunday, in addition to the one that the Diversity and Inclusion Committee had organized.
Okay.
Daniels and I was focused on software that people use to do community management work. And the one that I organized on Saturday was, I can't remember what I called it. It was building inclusive meritocracies. What do you need to know? And what do you need? What do you know? What do you need to know? What do you need to do? It's basically kind of trying to tease out what things that people want to measure in using metrics, and then what practices, in addition to mere measurement, people think are important for diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
I thought it drew a pretty good conversation around that. I have a lot of good notes from it.
All right, cool.
The diversity inclusion workshop went really well. Also, I think there were a lot of people there that are really interested in understanding, how do we make our project successful, and also pay attention to diversity and inclusion, because those are not metrics that we're traditionally evaluated by. And I thought Emma and Nicole had some really great stories that they shared that drew out stories for others as well.
Are the notes from those sessions available? I know some of them were supposed to be going up on a shared Etherpad type of deal. Did those sessions get actually notes taken from them up on the Etherpad?
I know mine has notes on a pad of paper because I didn't have a note taker, and I think Daniel took some Etherpad notes for the planned diversity and inclusion one.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak for my session too. They even have a GitHub repo where you can upload notes and like materials. I haven't done mine yet. My session was, I think it was Saturday. I assume it'll be ongoing for about a week or so. But yeah, I know, Sean, you took a lot of notes, like on your session on Saturday, right? I saw you take at least 2-3 pages worth of pages of notes. But yeah, I don't think Etherpad was even up like on Saturday morning when we were in our sessions. But
okay.
Yeah,
if there's a GitHub repo, that would be easy to throw some markdown into.
Yeah.
I found the GitHub repo, but I didn't see anything from some of the sessions. That's why I was asking. So,
is it a community summit repo? I don't recall seeing the repo, or I missed it.
I wrote it down somewhere, or I have a link somewhere, but I'll find it.
Let me see. I'll go look and see if I can find it in my.
Oh, I found it. So I'll put it on chat.
Perfect.
Would it be possible to, for one of you to write a short blog post, 1-2 paragraphs that we can post on our website, where we can include the link to the notes and stuff?
Yeah, it's a good idea. But
yeah, actually, Ray, is your talk available anywhere?
Yeah, I need to upload my slides, so I'll do that, and then. Yeah, one of the things I forgot to do was I forgot to add a slide at the end on here's where you find info on CHAOSS, but I think I verbally mentioned it at the beginning, but so.
Hey, so I'll make this offer. So Ray and Sean, if you can just kind of funnel some of your stuff down to myself and Georg.
Yep.
That we can perhaps kind of synthesize this stuff.
Right.
And that would, that way it'll take it a little off of your plate. You were the ones that were in Portland.
Yeah.
Georg and I can just kind of run through some of these notes and the slides, and Georg and I can kind of write a blog post, even if it's just a couple paragraphs.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be long.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I can send some. Sean, I'm sure you can do that too. Some bullet points on the discussions that happen in the hallway. But
yeah, I can do that.
But yeah, but I agree with Sean. It's a good event. Jono does a good job, and other volunteers do a good job of making it a very collaborative event.
Cool.
So,
Sean, were you able to? I think one of our hopes is that we can start kind of engaging more community managers for projects.
Yep. I made a number of. I didn't know as many community managers as I know now. So I think there's an opportunity to approach those people directly, as well as to have an audience that we can send things out to more generally.
Okay.
So I will do that. I've already made people aware individually, but I will do a more general recruiting push, because I mean, when we were talking about the working groups, I think growth, maturity, and decline definitely needs more community manager engagement. I was exploring a little bit how to get that and what we can give to community managers, what we can give back to get them engaged, and
Okay.
have a little bit of a sense of that now as well, better than I did.
All right, cool.
What do you expect as engagement? When you say you want them engaged, what do you expect?
Oh, from my perspective, it's, say, participating in the mail list, or participating in the work groups, or participating on these.
But why? So what do you expect from them?
Yep. So the reason why is because I think we have good representation from members from organizations pretty often. I don't feel like, so kind of this external to the community perspective. I understand that people play both roles in companies and communities. I think community managers would kind of give a different perspective as to what the meaning of these metrics can be for them. So I think Ray would speak from OPNFV when he was doing that work, which is always a really kind of a different perspective than, say, we would get from a for-profit company. That's why.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Any other comments from the Community Leadership Summit? All right, cool. I did think that I appreciate Georg sending out the Twitter feed. I think there were some interesting comments that always occur during the presentations. One that struck me during Ray's presentation was, if you ever want community managers to get into a fight, I don't think it was a fight, but if you ever want community managers to get into a disagreement, ask them about metrics.
Yeah.
Which I thought,
there's no shortage of opinion. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, that one in particular made me kind of reflect on the sense of what we're doing in the CHAOSS project.
I spent some time talking to the maintainer for the XFS file system, and he said that he's so annoyed by metrics that he essentially, in order to prove a point, gamed them so that he would be the top contributor one month, and then gamed them so he would be the bottom contributor the next month.
Okay, well, it's a gameable metric then.
So the people who are checking his metrics no longer bother him with that information.
I think that we're playing into them in that sense, because I think that unless we really do some empiricism, we are just essentially doing the same as everybody has. And I think that the big difference of this group is that it can actually do the research to show that this is not just opinion, that there are certain facts. And even if that fact is that people don't trust metrics.
You know, I mean, I think it goes beyond like whether this is empirically like a valid, like a metrics. Like, I mean, it's human nature. There are just lies, damn lies, and there are statistics, and metrics is
we can do science. Otherwise, everything is just the opinion of this group of people.
Right.
I think even if we're empirically validated, to Ray's point, human beings are going to still apply the empirically validated metrics in different ways.
That's right.
The interpretation.
And I think that we can do that. We can actually go out and ask these people, this leader. We can ask them how to use these metrics. We can actually show that people use the same metrics in different ways. We can show that some people trust the metrics and some people game them. Otherwise, we're just actually doing opinion.
I'm almost hesitant to. I always get worried when we start talking about metrics as like there's going to be one uniform set of metrics. You know, like I think what could be really useful is having a suite of metrics and clear documentation about what the pros and cons of each metric could have within a community, but also like, hey, there's different community structures within these different community structures, funding structures, etc. Different metrics may be more meaningful in some circumstances than others, and how to parse through that information so that community managers or leaders or what have you can actually quickly find the ones that are going to be meaningful within their context.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the context is important. right? I mean, I think one of the questions that came up towards the end was, you know, what are some of the metrics that I use? And my answer was, it really depends, right? I mean, it depends on who the audience is, what the purpose is, and what the context is. And, you know, I wish our job was easier so that we can just pull up like 3 things and we're done. But, you know, sometimes it takes a lot of thought and analysis, and that's our job, right? And as a community,
that you're misunderstanding me. I have never claimed that we should aim towards a specific set of metrics. All I'm saying is that any statement that we make should not be opinion. And every statement that we're making is just opinion.
So yeah, I don't know that, I totally understand your point, Daniel. And I completely agree that these shouldn't just be from the top of our brain kind of opinions, and providing any sort of, I'll just use the word rigor instead of empirics, but providing any rigor as to why certain metrics are what we think to be important, or why certain metrics are important. If we can help provide rigor behind that, that's 100% in our best interest. So I think we're actually, you know, I was perfectly validated. Yeah, well, I think that's just it, Sean. So Sean is saying that that a lot of the metrics that have been brought forward have been empirically validated through research. We need to be more explicit in that, which is something we haven't been doing. I think that's what you're saying, Sean. You're on mute. But
yeah, we have references that underlie the metrics that we've assembled. They come from an empirically validated place, and we just haven't made this. I think really to make it clear that this is not an academic exercise. I know in my case, I haven't put the references in because I don't want the community managers to think, well, this is just an academic exercise. So it's I mean, if adding references will add sort of some credibility in the eyes of the community manager, then I think it's helpful. But these are certainly, we're not making things up.
But I think that you are, because I don't see any empiricism in the way that you're coming up with metrics.
So others have come up with the metrics, and we're implementing them. And we haven't put the links to the papers, but we're not making them up, Daniel.
What I mean is that there are many, many metrics, but you're selecting the ones that you think that they are good. But why are you selecting them?
In large part, the ones that we selected usually are the ones that community managers have mentioned over and over again.
So that's exactly my point. So you have the perfect opportunity to say, we talked to 20 different community managers.
We just have to document it a lot better.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what we've done. It's just not documented.
Yes.
No. There's a difference between documentation and methodological rigor. And we don't have that methodological rigor. You're just doing anecdotal evidence.
Well, I don't know that that's entirely true. So for a number of the focus groups that we have run, we have done them quite rigorously.
But where is the analysis of that data that says this is the way that we are moving forward?
This is what I'm talking about documenting. You are correct. We have not been expressing.
But it's not documentation. It's methodology. That's what we.
Okay, then writing the methodology down. Maybe the word documentation is not the best word.
Because documentation is, I talked to somebody and somebody told me this.
No, I don't think that's what Matt and Sean is referring to. I think what they're documenting is something, I mean, that's more rigorous, right? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we have prioritized providing something useful to the community over academic publication and the kind of documentation of the methodologies and rigor that we use beforehand. I think as a second point, there are a number of things under review, but the academic publication process takes substantially longer than the...
No, I'm not talking about a paper. I'm talking about the traditional rigor that we do when we do research. If I had a grad student doing this, I would say you need to start all over again, because the process that you have does not lead towards scientific rigor. And that is what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I think that the difference that we have, the opportunity that we have, is to be able to have more convincing evidence that things are the way they are.
Correct. So I think we are providing methodological rigor. So for example, Georg, who's on this phone call, has been running interviews with community managers, as well as Kevin, with community managers and people within organizations who are trying to understand metrics and how they can inform the way that they understand their engagement with open source. Okay, so they've been running these interviews. These interviews have run through an IRB protocol. The interviews were set up using a formal methodology to actually set up questions. And so my point is that we have been rigorous, but I don't think we've been expressing that rigor in explicating these metrics. And I think the point to provide clearer details is a point very well taken.
And Kevin and I blocked some time on Thursday to go through the interviews, and we'll be continuing to do that going forward to distill what we learned from the interviews about the metrics, and we will provide this back to the community. So in a few weeks, I think we should have something written up that will outline how we collected the data, how we analyzed the data, what process we went through, and then what we learned with regards to all of these metrics.
I will just finish by saying, I think that then we have to be careful in terms of what we state and how we state it and what is the evidence behind what we state.
Sure. Yep. And I do think providing the methodological rigor that you're asking for will help in that regard.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think these are points very well taken. I mean, I agree that expressing the rigor is an important component, so it doesn't just appear that these are opinions. I kind of on this conversation too. I think so. Part of it is the rigor behind the metrics that we have, expressing that rigor behind those metrics. The other is, and this I think had come up with Thea, it had come up in other talks, which is trying to understand those metrics in practice. So we can run the strong methods to understand what people care about, right? I can run official interviews, and I can interview somebody like Ray and say, when you were at OPNFV, what did you look at? What did you care about? And whatever the interview protocol looked like. And we do this process rigorously. But then the question is how are those metrics actually used in practice is kind of a different set of questions, or a different methodology than trying to understand what people want, which is a fair thing, but then understanding what the impacts of those are in practice.
I agree, yeah.
Yep, and so I don't think we've thought too much about that yet, and I think the challenge is, it's kind of like the comment that Ray got during his talk, that if you want community managers to get into a fight, ask them about metrics, about how they apply these metrics. Or I think Thea, this is when I was listening to Thea, that the context matters, right? That how these actually impact matter. So do we as a community try to explicate these metrics in practice and how they change behaviors, or do we as a community say, here are the metrics we've determined that people want, and then we're done? See what I'm saying? Like, how far out into the process do we go as a community? So we can say the first part. We can say these are the metrics that people have told us they would like to see. I'm pretty sure we can say that effectively and with strong rigor. If we were to follow that all the way to the end and say, if you do these metrics, you will get these things, like, we'll never be able to say that. That's just not possible. If you look at metrics A, B, and C, then I guarantee that your community will be healthier. Like, we're never going to be able to say something like that. So there's kind of the in between, which is here are the metrics we know people like and would like to be able to take a look at. We can answer those, I think, pretty well. We're never going to get to the full end of the chain, as I think we all agree, because everything's so context specific. We're never going to be able to prescribe metrics for a particular action. So I guess one of my questions that I'm always struggling with is how far out do we go? At what point as a community do we say we're done? This is as far as we can go. And so right now, sorry, I'm kind of talking a while, but right now we kind of say we have 4 categories that we think are important, right? We have growth, maturity, and decline, diversity and inclusion, risk, and value, right? And sorry I use the word I think. So you can kill me on that, Daniel. But here are the categories that we want to put forward, and these are the metrics that comprise those categories. It helps orient people, okay? It helps orient a community manager, but how those are used in practice is kind of a whole nother set of questions. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't know if that made sense at all.
It made sense. It made sense to me. I think where we stop is when we have a process in place that community managers and people interested in metrics can use to sort of continuously evaluate the utility of different metrics. I don't think we're going to reach an end point where metrics are put out there and used and remain static and useful across the board all the time. I think there's always going to need to be some evolution, because as soon as there's a metric, people will game it.
So the metaphor that I kept thinking was like if you have a kid that you're about ready to send off to college, you have a bunch of categories that you're trying to orient them on. So maybe one of those categories is understanding finances. Maybe one of those categories is understanding how to be a good person, a good social person out in the world. Another category, I don't know what those categories, but you know, to give those to another parent, you're not going to say just do these steps A, B, and C, and I guarantee you'll have a perfect kid. But I'm saying these are the things that you probably want to keep an eye out for. Financing, being a good social person, considering education in the future, whatever those categories might be.
I wonder if there's an interim step. I mean, whenever I'm asked a question by another community,
yeah,
my first go-to is always, well, I'll tell you what worked for me.
Yeah.
Right? So I think they're outside of the very rigorous empirical stuff. I think instead of making, let's say, instinct-based prescriptive recommendations, having volumes of past case studies, examples of things that have worked or not worked for other people. You know, I think there also could be room for, you know, if we've got a group of folks who are all trying to solve the same problems, you know, it might be interesting even within ourselves to do A/B testing on like what metrics have, you know, are we all using the same metrics, and can we do some testing to see what the effect of different metrics are on some of these communities.
Okay.
You know, I think there might be a lot of interim steps instead of making recommendations that would empower people to make their own choices without.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't think we'll ever get to the recommendation. I don't know that. I think that's just a loose end that can never be grabbed, just because contexts are so different. Oh, I like that. I jotted that down. What are some other thoughts here? I think about this one a lot. This is how far out, what's the story? How far out of the story can we tell from this project? Sean, Daniel, Kate, Georg, anybody?
I mean, it's really a question of what are the boundaries of the story.
Yeah, exactly. What are the boundaries? I think Thea brought some boundaries up, potential case studies of how these metrics are being used in practice. That's cool.
Well, so I think that we can start by having precise goals that they are well defined. What you just said is a very good one. So how are projects using metrics? Are they using them at all? Who are the stakeholders of metrics? And what are the different concerns that they each have?
I think your stakeholders question is a really great one.
What was the question exactly?
About stakeholders and who are the stakeholders for metrics? One of the talks at the Community Leadership Summit highlighted how people who do community leadership and management they literally report across the board to almost every corner of every organization. There's no, like when you talk about stakeholders, the stakeholders for these kinds of metrics end up being hard to pin down consistently because they don't exist consistently.
Okay.
Well, it's also the fact that we have been using the term measuring from different points of view. So sometimes we talk from the point of view of the developer. Sometimes we talk from the point of view of a potential user. Yes. Sometimes we talk about a current user. Yep. So I think that even just a simple discovery of who uses metrics or who is interested in metrics is valuable, so we understand who the users are. Good. And then once we understand who the users are, then we can start asking, why do you need to measure? Or better, perhaps that's even a wrong question, is what do you need that you think that you can get through measuring?
Okay. Would there be a question in here is what actions do you take?
Well, so there are two issues here. One of them is, are you already measuring? If you're already measuring, then what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages? What are the challenges? What is what you are not able to do that you would like to do? And for people who are not measuring is, why is that you're not measuring?
Okay.
And what sort of information would you like to have? And so I think that the first step, so it's almost like the first challenge is requirements gathering.
Yep.
And requirements gathering requires to know who are the potential benefactors of all of this, and what is the problem that they are trying to solve. I don't think that we even have a clear idea in terms of what that is. Or let me rephrase that, we have many views in terms of what that is, but we cannot even rank it.
Correct.
So I think that if we do this requirement gathering, then we can have precise goals that say, we need to do this first, we need to do this second, this is more of a long-term goal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then achieve them is slowly and incrementally rather than try to have a universal solution. Which I agree with you, it will probably never happen.
Yeah, okay, cool. This is super helpful.
So from a CHAOSS project-wide perspective, I agree, we don't have that. When we go down into the work groups, at least for the diversity and inclusion work group, I know we have gone through several weeks of defining our goal for the work group and what we want to accomplish. So we have a fairly good idea within the diversity and inclusion work group that we want to provide resources for open source projects to create a diversity and inclusion report. And the resource that we provide provides the tools and success stories and methods that communities can use to create such a report. And our goal is to help open source projects create reports that can be compared across. So for the work group itself, we have a very good goal in mind and a target that we're working towards.
But even in terms of that report that you're talking about, it might be valuable to say, so what is this report? Who wants this report? Why is this report important?
So the people that we are targeting are community managers or those that work within open source projects and care about diversity and inclusion. And we know there are in many projects people who care about this. And these are the ones they're currently working on so many levels, but they're all working separately and creating their own surveys, creating their own tools. And we want to provide the toolbox that they can use.
So I think that your statement is quite interesting. I think that it will be valuable to know what are the tools that they're building, what they're currently measuring, and then going from there, trying to unify them. But what exactly is a community manager? We seem to use that term frequently here, but I have never really seen that title attached to within a project, except perhaps
the Linux Foundation actually has a job posting that is called Community Manager. But I think it's very different for projects. The tasks are very...
I also, Daniel, all the Ubuntu stuff from 5 years ago, the art of community management, the stuff that Jonah did, that really solidified the term community manager.
So the community manager
is in that book.
It's not part of the project, but it's an outsider that is trying to manage the project?
No, they're inside the project usually. And what they're trying to do is basically act as an interface between the management and the actual volunteers.
So we're talking about projects that have a relatively large size that probably have industrial backing.
Exactly. The book George is handing, the book that George is holding up right now, our community. It's got, I think it's got a definition in it by my memory. I don't know exactly which page it's on, but I think that's probably where there's a common understanding of what community managers arrive from.
So there are not many of these community managers in open source, comparatively speaking, to the number of projects.
No,
in open source.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay.
So this is all really okay. Thanks, Kate. This is all super helpful to me. Daniel, I do appreciate you bringing this up a couple of weeks ago and pushing the point. I think it's a very important.
No, sorry. I just feel like I'm against. So I'm always the one talking against what everybody else is doing.
No, we're on your side.
All of you are doing.
No, it's a great point. I think basically one of the things that I kind of jotted down is on the series of goals that you were kind of expressing. I think I'm going to try to start formalizing this. Maybe with Georg, we can follow the approach that we've been using, Georg, on interview construction, because I think it's a great way to elicit questions that are relevant. I don't know if he hears me, but it's a formal.
I agree.
Okay, just kind of a formal process, and I think Daniel, I think it would give us a really nice approach for start talking about the questions that can highlight how these metrics live in the world.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I think that the issue is that every time that we start going into an interview, we already have some goals, right? We need to understand what we're trying to understand of the world.
Yep.
And so I think that thinking in terms of who our stakeholders are, like I didn't really know exactly this term of community manager until minutes ago. And it seems to be that a lot of the effort that we're doing is towards that particular person, right?
I think that's one of the people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I use that umbrella to reflect really whomever on a project is interested or focused on encouraging newcomers to participate. So I use the community manager term, and I think most of us recognize that role doesn't always exist, but as a formal role. But there's always people who are trying to get newcomers engaged in a project in many cases.
So perhaps even for ourselves, we need to be a little bit more clear in terms of definitions and naming. And I think that this is also an issue that has appeared when we define metrics. Mm-hmm. And so I think that at different levels, formalization is not only in terms of what steps we're taking, but even what vocabulary we're going to use.
Yep. I think we're getting sharper on that. I think we're a lot better than we were, say, 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, point taken again. Just continue to stay honed in on that. It's like an academic paper, right? When you use different definitions for the same things, it confuses the audience.
Yeah, it confuses people.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, so I think the way I see it is, all of us have a great opportunity to be able to advance research in this field. I think that what we're doing is in many ways just an extension of the work that has been doing in the last 15 years, trying to measure open source. And the big difference is that we have the opportunity to make it a little bit more rigorous.
Yep, I agree.
We have the context to be able to do that. If we lose that advantage, then we're just going to be another project that tries to measure.
No, and like I said earlier, I think we are doing a lot of this. I just don't think we're expressing it well at all. Okay, cool. What's any other things that people want to chat about? KR, you did mention some D&I stuff. I don't know if there's anything you want to chat about in that regard.
No, we were more focused on getting the conferences ready and the sessions planned out. So that's where the diversity and inclusion work efforts went in the last week.
Okay.
Because we had the Community Leadership Summit, and then we're also working on the Open Source Summit, North America and Europe, and we also want to do something like mock tests.
Okay.
So that's what we're working on right now.
Okay. Sean or Daniel with Augur or Cregit?
I don't have any Augur updates since last week.
Okay.
Yeah, neither do I.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else have any burning issues? Good chatting with everybody.
Is there a program for Vancouver?
Yeah, the program's up. The schedule's up.
Okay. So where do I find that schedule? For the CHAOSS Conf.
Oh, well, the CHAOSScon, you can just go to, here, I'll put it in the, oops. Unless somebody beats me to it. Daniel, do you have the chat here? Chat window?
Yeah, I just opened. Oh yeah, I see it right now. Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. And the Open Source Summit North America, that schedule is also posted. All right. This is very good.
So I'm looking through the Art of Community book every time Bacon writes community manager to see if there is a succinct definition. And it's just spread out throughout the entire book. He's talking about the roles and responsibilities and the characteristics and the tasks and how he interacts with users and how he interacts with developers. It's all throughout the book. So there's no one sentence definition that he provides.
Too bad. It would solve our problem if they just say community managers are.
Yes. That was what I was looking for.
All right, well, say la vie.
So I'm looking at the program, and so the afternoon things are workshops / tutorials. Which ones are workshops and which ones are tutorials? They seem, one of them says sorting hat workshop, but the other ones don't seem to imply that they're just more like presentations or. So we don't really have a time just open for discussion like we're doing now, right?
You're talking about CHAOSScon right now?
Yeah.
Correct. We did not schedule a round table time.
No, I'm not talking about round table time, like really a time where we can say, let's discuss what the topics are for discussion, and then let's break groups into each one of those and then come back and discuss them. So we don't have that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We had so many submissions that we wanted to provide enough time for those. We do have a fairly long lunch where informal conversations can happen, and we end at, I think, 5:30. So we can do something at the end if we want to.
Hey, and Daniel, the lightning talks, do you see that at 2:30?
Yeah, I think that my original my original view of this is really very different what has become. I think that this will be good to socialize, but this is really not good for planning an agenda.
And there's a second part that we are not advertising. On the next day, we have a room or table at the Open Source Summit North America that is reserved for CHAOSS. And that is where we can do this kind of getting together, breaking up in groups, discussing. But this is not advertised because we don't want to be swamped with new people. We want to keep this discussion on the next day to ourselves.
Do you know how long that is, Georg?
People, sorry, what?
Is it like a couple hours in the morning?
I forgot the times.
Okay.
I don't have them in my head. But we have a table in one of the rooms. We don't get a room to ourselves, but we have dedicated space.
Okay, so that's on Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know Ray helped us organize that.
So Daniel, maybe that suits what you're talking about.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully, and yeah, because yeah.
Okay.
Okay. This is something
What is
we will advertise this so that everyone who shows up to this thing on Wednesday will already be in the mindset from CHAOSScon.
Could you if you could find the times on that Wednesday one?
Yeah.
You could just ping me. I can share it with people. Alrighty. Good. All right. Other items, people? Very open. Alrighty. Well, if not, unless going once, going twice. If not, then we'll see you on the mail list and next week again. So till then.
All right. See you all.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, Thea.